there are a lot of places to get information, and in order to do that, it takes time, right? It takes time to figure out what you want to do, how you want to take care of yourself. So in order to do that, we need to take responsibility for our own wellness is what I'm saying. And maybe watching the news isn't the best idea for you, but just figure out what works for you. And I know for me, I'm usually a 6-7 hour sleeper. I've been sleeping 8 to 10 hours right now because that's how I deal with stress.
My name is Tim Westbrook, and the question of the day is COVID-19 and recovery housing. What's better? What's safer? Is it safer to go to sober living, or is it safer to stay home? Is it safer to get sober, to get clean, to get sober, to get the support, the community, the accountability, and everything you need to help you stay clean and sober, to help you get on that path to recovery? Is that a better route, or is it better to just continue drinking and using? We've had it happen since March. This pandemic has gone on for such a long time. And today I'm here with Sazha Ramos and Rogan O'Donnell, and they're both huge advocates for recovery housing. And myself, I own Camelback Recovery in Scottsdale, and we've got House on as well. And we've had COVID outbreaks at our homes. Rogan has had COVID outbreaks in his home. So, and Rogan, yours was at the beginning of the pandemic, and mine was here probably a month ago or so. And so we're going to talk about that today. But Rogan and Sazha, welcome to the show. I'm so glad to have you.
Thanks so much, Tim, for having us. We've been following your work for a little bit now, and you've had some amazing people on the podcast. So it's an honor to be a guest and then to work with you on the C4 panels. We know you're really doing the deal out in Arizona, and we love Camelback Recovery.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And Sazha, by the way, is a Navy veteran in recovery and founder of the Recovery Organization Resources. Sazha brings a unique perspective to recovery housing after living in one, operating two, and now working nationally as an advocate for recovery houses. Next year, she will complete her master's in social work at Rutgers University and continue to bring new thought leadership into the recovery housing space. And Rogan, it's good to see you as well.
Nice to see you too, Tim, and thank you so much.
And so, okay, so I guess we'll before we get started, let's talk about our passion. Sazha, why are you an advocate for recovery housing, and why are you so passionate about it?
When I grew up, I didn't think I was going to become the recovery housing girl, but it found me, and you accept your destiny as you do in recovery, right? A lot of it is because I love the sense of home and community. And, I got sober in Prescott, Arizona. I went through Treehouse Learning Community, which is a collegiate recovery community. It was co-ed. It was apartment style. I wasn't in an apartment with any men, but they did live next door to me. After being in treatment for 4 months with women, I really liked the change. I was young enough, where I wanted to be around young people. And when you're in recovery, and I'm sure you all know, it's finally, I found people that are doing what I'm doing, and I can have fun, So I was 25 years old, and I enjoyed it. I really, really liked it. And it was so different from me being in the military and living in barracks, I was following the rules there. It's very obvious I know how to follow the rules, right? I was in the military. But then going into recovery, it's the opposite polarity of that. And I have always been an entrepreneur. My family comes from the nursing business. They've owned a home health care going into elderly folks' homes. So I've been around home health care for a long time. So I've had that background. I lived in one for 10 months. And then I worked for one in Arizona. And then later on, I decided to open one in Louisiana. And that was truly a calling, which is really cool because I know Rogan's was a calling as well. And it's just that thing around like creating home, creating family, creating community and connection. And now working at the national level, it's been really interesting to see how each state is differently. I know we'll dive into why we talk about the Wild Wild West as recovery housing, but I believe that recovery houses are even more important than treatment because that's where you're integrating back into the society. Detox and 30-day treatment, really, really important, right? To like remove the shock factor. But in order for you to live your life, integrating back into the community at a recovery house is so important.
How long ago were you at Treehouse?
I was at Treehouse in 2014.
Okay, 2014. And was Molly McGinn there?
Yes.
Awesome. Love Molly.
Yes. I owe so much to that community. They have helped me so much. They continue to help me. I'm still connected with them. Molly keeps trying to get me to come to Kino, which is where we take all the students for like spring break or like winter break. And it's so nice to be around like-minded folks. Like we were all in college. We all were working on a recovery program and we all like were young and we wanted to be alive, from going from not wanting to be alive to learning how to be alive. Right.
And how long were you at Treehouse for?
I was at Treehouse for 10 months, which is 2 semesters.
Okay. And do you think you stayed long enough?
Yes, because I actually moved maybe like less than 5 minutes away. So I could have just went, I just could go down the street and see them. And that recovery house, the collegiate recovery house, it was truly like a revolving door of folks. So it was like, even if you didn't live in the community, they hired me to work for the community where I did overnights. I was still friends with the people there. And they did, either I tried to stay longer or they kicked me out or it was the other way around. But, you know, I was there and I was connected. And that's something important in quality recovery house, those connections that exist after you even leave.
What do you think is the biggest thing that you took away from being in that recovery community for 10 months?
Well, I think for me, I came in like I knew everything. Like I was hot shit, obviously, because I went from working on Capitol Hill, right? And owning my own apartment and living on my own since I was 16 years old. And then I go into this recovery house at 25 and I'm like, I got this. I definitely know what to do. But it was where I started to begin to trust other people, like truly understand what trust meant. When they were like, you know what, Sazha, maybe you should only take one class right now and then go get a job at Whole Foods washing dishes. And I was like, I just started working. I was just working on Capitol Hill. There's no way I'm going to wash dishes. But I did. And I actually really liked it. And it's another reason why I'm like super into wellness right now, because what I learned at Whole Foods,
Yeah.
And I learned the simplicity of life and how beautiful it can be if I don't make it, if I don't engage in my distractions.
You bring up a really good point. You went and worked at Whole Foods and you're still working on Capitol Hill. And I hear that, I see that so often. I'm sure you guys see it as well. If you have someone who had some sort of a career prior to getting clean and sober, and then they go to treatment, and then they live in sober, and they're like, I'm better than, like, we had someone that we thought was actually a good, I mean, he had a career. He was making big money, and he interviewed to become a house manager for us. And I was like, I was so happy because I thought he was going to go for it. And I was like, yes, this is what you need to do. Like, you don't need to go out and get yourself another career. Not right now. And he declined. He said, you know what? I'm too good for this house manager position. I really am better than this. And he was drunk within, he was drunk within a few days. I mean, and it was so sad because he was with us for quite some time. And again, he was a leader in the house, and he was, I mean, it's like, okay, this is because being a house manager is like that next step in recovery. It's just a job. And let's continue focusing on your foundation. Let's continue focusing on recovery so that we can get ourselves ready for the stressors of everyday life, right? Mm-hmm. And I drove for Uber for a while, and I'll tell you, I mean, mind you, I'm a college graduate. I went to T. Davis. I've owned businesses. I've made lots of money. I've done lots of things, and next thing you know, I'm driving for Uber. Which driving for Uber, let me tell you, is humbling. And but it's like the best thing it was so much fun. And I was able to go aside. I had fun. I didn't all I did was I drove people around. I talked with people. Some people were super wasted. And I was like, wow, I'm so glad that's not me. I'm grateful. Right. So,
and like you with the Uber, like I learned how to have fun with just the little that I had, and I was just okay with that. And I needed to learn those foundational steps, like in order to enjoy the life that I have today. And I didn't really enjoy the life that I had, like when I was 22 or 16 or 17 or 18, or the success that I had. It wasn't even real, in my opinion, because I'd never stopped to smell the roses, I guess.
Right. Exactly. Okay, so now, again, we're going to talk about the impact of COVID-19 on recovery housing, and the questions are: is it better to get clean and sober? Is it better to go to sober living, or is it better to go to a hotel or an Airbnb or a hotel, or go back home to your old environment? So we're going to talk about that, but first, I want to switch over to you, Rogan, and tell me a little bit about you and how you ended up where you are today.
Absolutely. I was enjoying listening to you guys. That was great. And just to stem off what you said is, pride and ego, they're killers. And in early recovery, I can't go ahead and be a house manager or drive for Uber or work at a Whole Foods. The ego takes over. We know the analogy, easing God out. And next thing you know, I'm drunk in a couple of weeks or a month or something of that nature. It's just the nature of our business. And so much of that knowledge comes from having the experience of living in a recovery house and being part of that recovery community, because here we're all talking about our education and all these great things that we've done, but the fundamentals that we get in recovery is new education. We learn about our bodies, we learn about our minds, we learn about our spirits, we learn how to grow, and that in itself, I'm sure we all know the statistics. If you stay sober for a year, then you have the higher probability of staying sober for 5 years. And if you stay sober for 5 years, you have even a higher probability of staying sober for the rest of your life. More about me is that this year in 2020, two big numbers happened. I celebrated 30 years of recovery. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Yeah. Awesome. That's a big one.
That's a big one.
And I got sober at the age of 19, just about a month and a half until I turned 20, my freshman year of college.
Wow.
But the whole part of it was that there was other people living in a sober house on campus who literally showed up to my doorstep pretty much at my bottom. I'd had a whopper of 3.5 weeks. And a knock on the door, and the funny part is that spiritual connection. I had literally said to the power of my understanding, God, I said, if you're not there, I'm effed, and we're gonna go crazy and go live in, Haight-Ashbury and walk around and sell flowers, or put me in a mental hospital with my paper slippers and I'll just shuffle and drool because this whole living thing is done with, and I'm too much of a chicken to take my own life, and I'll boom. Stone sober, went to sleep, knock on the door, and there's two upperclassmen that say, want to go to a meeting tonight. And I'm like, really? Okay. And then they have a sober house called Serenity Hill, about a quarter mile off of campus at Franklin Pierce College in Rindge, New Hampshire. And for the next 3.5 years, I literally graduated college. I literally got my life together. I literally repaired relationships with the family and with other people in my life. I literally found out that I was smart. I could do these things. I could be this person. And I could also be helpful and useful. And like you were saying, just taking a job, not a career. I think the blessing, one of the blessings of getting sober really early on was I didn't have any choices. I was in college. This is what I was to do, make it happen, and put one right foot in front of the left. But I had other people who were older, who were already trudging the path, and were able to say like, hey, this is what's going to happen. And, you know, watch out for this. And collective knowledge comes into play in a sober house, where I tried that, it didn't work for me, or try this worked for me. And that's where things really blossomed to, you know, I too have owned a plethora of my own businesses, and I knock on wood, and I've been successful. Sazha and I have met up and created together recovery organization resources, where we're on this national platform and really trying to make a difference in what recovery housing looks like. And as you were saying about COVID, unfortunately, New Foundation Recovery House in Freehold, New Jersey, is my sober house. Has started over 11 years ago. The simple part is, we in Freehold, New Jersey, were on the national scene as far as the first deaths being occurred, because a family went over to Italy, or had family from Italy come over here to have a family reunion. And then all of a sudden the outbreak really started to go on. When that happened, we all know, but just to go back in time, you had shutdown, you had closures like you wouldn't believe. Essential businesses were the only businesses that remained open. And then you had to qualify to be an essential business. Just for the record and for your podcast, Tim, I don't know about you, but I never got a letter saying I was an essential business. And yet life and death occurs at sober houses. But a dump truck here in New Jersey was an essential business to haul that dirt to go put in a hole somewhere. But your family members, my family members' life in a recovery house is not an essential business. That's also more of what's inspired Sazha and I to get on the national platform, is to be able to make some kind of an impact, to get like-minded folks to come together to say, wait a second, we gotta rethink this. You know, recovery houses are life and death. Recovery houses are the continuum of healthcare. They build recovery communities. They're just like you said about that person who didn't want to take the JOB and was drinking in the next handful of weeks. That person, for them to drink is Russian roulette, spinning the gun. It was for me. And for the men that I've seen in my sober house, it definitely is. You know, the unfortunates are in owning a recovery house for a long time. Thank you, blessings that we haven't had anybody pass in our sober house, but there are people who have come through my sober house who have left and moved on. And, you know, I hear from the grapevine that they relapsed and have passed on to no longer to be with us. And no COVID, that's just in this 11 years. So continuum of care, and going back to what I was saying, is an essential business. If you take away like what's happened to us, our 12-step meetings have become Zoom. Okay, great. And there's lots of controversy of, you know, going on Zoom and staring at the screen and being able to have that personal connect and being able to make those relationships and bonds and stuff. And I get it. Everybody's different and everybody has their own pathway to recovery. But I'm an old school 30-year AA guy. So for me, having that connection early on was essential for a non-essential business. It was essential to my recovery. In a nutshell, my recovery house, unfortunately, our house manager, who is our house manager for about 5 years, his whole family got COVID really bad. He was actually in the ICU for about 3.5 weeks. Along with his mom and his siblings. His mom, unfortunately, is no longer here with us because of the COVID virus. He didn't want to come back to the sober house because of everything that took place, which is completely understandable. The men that we had, we're a small sober house. We were only 8 guys. And because of him testing positive and being hospitalized, we had 3 guys who just turned around and said, I don't have a job. I've got a stimulus check. I'm making $600 a week, way more than I've been making in a long time. You know, she called, they called, I'm out of here. I'll come back when the pandemic is over. So 3 people left, and all cordial too. I mean, the guys were straight up honest and polite. Like, this is what I'm doing. I don't care what you have to say. Thank you so much. Goodbye. One of the other gentlemen, because he lost his job and he was worried for his wife and kids, he kind of had like I don't want to say he had a nervous breakdown, but he definitely had some kind of a breakdown and was hospitalized, and he wasn't coming back. So right there's 4 guys. 2 of the guys had already planned on leaving. We were waiting. We were all happy and excited because in April they were gone, beginning at the end of April, which was planned and all that stuff. And they just escalated it because it was already there. It was no big deal. And then we were left with 1 gentleman. And to be able to keep a sober house up and going under those conditions, when you're shut down and everything is turned upside down, we talked to him, and he had made plans to move back with his family in the next couple of months, and we ended up closing our sober house down after 11 years of doing some, in my opinion, really good quality work. We're not closed forever, but temporarily until the coronavirus is come and gone, we're not going to open back up again.
It's so unfortunate. It's so unfortunate because your business is there to help people get on the path to recovery, and that's not happening. You're not able to help anybody because you're closed. And I have my experiences because I've had COVID outbreaks at a couple of my homes, and I'll share those here in a minute. So with the people that you had in your home, because your home stayed pretty full all the time, right? Yeah, for 11 years.
Yeah, we were known from coast to coast and north to south. We had people from California stay with us, from Maine, from Texas, from Florida, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Connecticut. Yeah, it did a lot of good.
Right. So you've helped a lot of people on their path to recovery, get clean and sober, stay clean and sober. This COVID things hits. And then without your guys even getting COVID, they end up saying, you know what, I'm just going to drink. I'm out.
A lot of the 3 of them that came into my office, and I don't want to say they all came in together. It was kind of one after another within a couple of days put forth. It was based on they were being told they were receiving stimulus checks for $1,200. They were told that they were going to get an extra $600 on the unemployment plus their unemployment. They had just come in within 30, 60 days of recovery. All 3 of them had significant others or relationships that were lingering, if you would. And I mean, look, we're human. It's human nature. I got a pocket full of gold, and she wants me. How good is that? You know, and the truth is too, is like, look, I went to rehab. I lived in a sober house for a couple of months. I'm doing good. I can go home, and we don't have any 12-step meetings to go to anymore. It's all going to be on Zoom. I don't have work to go to anymore. And this is to your point, is it better to stay in community in a sober house versus go back home or wherever those guys were going? I would have said to stay in the recovery house for the simple part of that. You've got like-minded community, because if you think about really what I'm talking about, underneath the undertone is fear. They're afraid that she's going to leave because of a pandemic, that the job is already gone because of a pandemic. There's no meetings to go to because of a pandemic. The world is isolating and shutting down because of a pandemic. I go on and listen to the news, and it's fear, 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 dead, 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 scary, scary, scary because of a pandemic. To stay in with like-minded people who could talk about that, and as we're told in our communities, peer to peer, and be able to support one another, in my opinion, would have been the perfect fitting. But with, I think, the perfect storm with our house manager, who was a rock and a pillar, having the unfortunates to be hospitalized for 3.5 weeks and the passing of his family member and scary stuff like that, it just put more fear in our isolated incident at New Foundations, where it was a lot to expect to be able to keep it going without being able to turn it around. And in all fairness too, I'm very involved with the sober house and was there on a regular basis, but I have small children. So here we have this, pandemic happening and people are getting really, scared and schools are shut down. So I've got kids at home, and then I have men in recovery at a recovery house, and my house managers in the ICU. It really became completely different than I could have ever imagined.
Right. How unfortunate. Okay, so now here we are 7, 8, 9 months later. Do you know what has happened to the 3 men that were at your house that left, including your house manager? What's going on with him?
My house manager is living with his brother and sister, his sister-in-law. His sister-in-law, she was hospitalized with the coronavirus as well for about a month. Everybody there is doing fine. I spoke to him, I want to say it was just last week. And, he's doing well. The other 3 gentlemen, I've put calls out to everybody just to keep in touch, like once a month. Those 3 guys, I have not gotten a phone call back from them ever since April. Right. That's just the way it goes. The 2 guys that were scheduled to leave, they're doing great. They're with their families. They're riding it out, doing the best they can. And the cool part is, like, we send links to different meetings all around and really do the encouraging of, like, hey, you want to go to a meeting in Australia? Check out this link. You want to go to a meeting in Scotland? Check this out. You want to go to one in Ireland? Check this out. So some cool stuff has happened with being able to go to 12-step meetings. You can go to 12-step meetings all around the world. Now, literally, this is the coolest thing, I think, anyways. Yeah. Any minute of the day, you can zoom into a meeting somewhere on the planet. I can go to California if I got up late or got up early. I can go. You're in Arizona. Here we are in New Jersey, just as a simple example of this. But now we'll be able to do that forever. Right. So out of the bad, there's also been some real positives. And I think that this coronavirus has put a spotlight again on the continuum of care of what recovery housing does, but also what recovery does. And we've got folks who are elderly who are now on Zoom meetings where they may not have been able to leave their homes or may have had health conditions and couldn't go to regular meetings. And now they have that opportunity to be able to get involved and stay involved in their recovery and in a community in a different way, but yet in a way that works for them. So just a little gratitude for something that's come out of this, because we can look at all the yucky stuff and there's plenty of it, but I do want to just spin a little bit to a little positive.
Yeah. I mean, hey, it's staying connected. We've got to be, we have to be flexible, right? And I mean, to your point, a lot of good has come from this, and that's, being in recovery. One of the things we learn to look at is, okay, what am I grateful for today? And I know I have to be grateful for everything. Yeah. And until I get to a place of gratitude, then I'm going to be resentful. I'm going to be a victim. Basically, I'm going to be a victim. I'm a victim. Until I'm grateful, I'm a victim. And none of us are victims. And, we've got this coronavirus, which, by the way, the more I've learned more and more about this. I went and saw Dr. Rebecca Miller over at the Holistic Urgent Care Center. And, there's lots of strains of coronavirus. We all have had coronavirus at some point or another. And it's just, it's not that big of a deal. I mean, there have been casualties as a result, but my understanding, again, I'm not a doctor. However, my understanding is that there's like 99.6% recovery rate or something like that. So the recovery rate is massive. And it's more important for us to take care of ourselves, get enough sleep, human connection, right? Being around people, which one of the things with Zoom meetings, it's like, make sure your camera is on, make sure you have your own camera, make sure you show up early, you stay late, you try to talk to a few people, you try to connect to a few people, and everything is going to work out okay, you know? And it's, I know lots of people who have had the coronavirus, and so far, it hasn't been that big of a deal. Not to say it's just like any other strain of coronavirus has caused catastrophes, or not catastrophes, but has caused deaths as well. It's just like any flu. I mean, like if someone's sick already, which, I mean, again, I'm not trying to sound sensitive or non-sympathetic or anything like that, but it's, you know, we as humans, we have immune systems. Our immune systems need to be exposed to, you know, call it the triggers of everyday life, call it viruses, call it dirt, call it mold, that's how we get stronger, right? Yeah. That's how we get stronger, by being exposed, taking care of ourselves, eating the right food, getting enough sleep, exercising, laughter, human, all the things that we need. So, Sazha, again, I had Corona outbreaks at a couple of my homes, 2 completely different ways that they were, that the homes responded to them. So I think I'm ready to talk about that. But Sazha, first, I want to turn it over to you and tell me about your experience with, or do you have any specific experiences with coronavirus in any of those that you have been closely attached to or closely related to?
So no, I've been connected with some that I've been talking with, but I mean, just like personally in recovery. So I moved back home from Washington, D.C. to New Jersey to my folks' house. And my mom was treating patients with COVID. So every day, you know, like the whole family kind of had to change because my mom was being exposed to COVID every day. So my father would go and pick her up. She'd bring her new clothes. She'd come in, she'd shower, and like on the daily, we were cleaning, right? So I imagine at a recovery house, they had to do something similar if you're working with healthcare or patients of that sort. I was just reading the notes from the National Association of Recovery Residents' open call. Do you go on those, Tim?
Occasionally, yes.
So it's just really good, a good way to like stay on the pulse. And as the recovery housing woman, right, it's I like to know, I like to be in the know. So from the call, these are just some notes that I got from there, is that people are still really dealing with isolation and what is going on, like in terms of like the vaccine. So one of these issues is that the information isn't coming to us in a way that's accurate, and in a way that's truthful, right? So, you know, what we were just talking about, the vaccine and the virus, we're seeing on the news that it's really, really serious, right? And some people know people that have died, and some people know the people that have recovered as well. So there's all this information that we're trying to dissect through, but who do we trust enough to get this information from, right? Because some people don't trust the government. Some people don't trust that meme that has the COVID information on there, right? So where do we get this information from? And on the NAR call, they were saying there needs to be someone kind of stewarding this information and going through it, and being a leader in that space to digest it for folks in recovery in a layman's term. You know, not everyone wants to listen to Dr. Fauci, and not everybody watches the news, honestly. And for younger generations right now, it's not the only way that people are getting media. So, you know, it has affected people so much differently. And I think a lot of the complications can come from being previously sick, right? And then being more susceptible to a virus, a flu-like virus. And then at the bottom of it, or the top of it, or the center of it, or whatever, some people aren't well to begin with, especially people in recovery. If you have been hurting your immune system from substance use, right? And me and Rogan just went to Dr. Amen's clinic to get our brain scanned. And it said 6 years of opioids, there's holes all over your brain, right? And I was using opioids for a lot longer than that, right?
Right.
So I'm really interested to see what the brain looks like, but the brain is connected to our nervous system, right? And if we aren't using the brain and the nervous system in a way that's like a feedback loop, right, we're not getting well and we're not going to get better. So, this whole thing of trying to dissect that information is complicated because there are people and things out there that want us to be confused and want us not to have the information. So we're not empowered around our wellness, and that we're not sovereign beings around our recovery.
Right.
Well,
so I you guys see, I posted, is this a fake pandemic? And I mean, I've heard lots of people say it's a fake pandemic. Sure. And it's not to say that the coronavirus is not real. So just to clarify, it is real. However, it's, is it really a pandemic? There's lots of people that are saying it's really not a pandemic. It's really not a pandemic. And to your point, it's like taking care of ourselves, eating the right foods, getting enough sleep, not being stressed out. And I can, I personally had COVID-19. I don't have it anymore. I had it, and I can tell you, looking back, and it was very interesting because it was the day that it actually hit me was a day that I was feeling under the weather. I was feeling under the weather, and what I mean is that I got less than 5 hours of sleep. I work a lot, and I was stressed out, and I had a lot going on. And that day, like the end of the day, like in the evening, was when I started to feel a little bit of a scratchy throat. And I was like, oh, okay. And I didn't think anything of it. And then, and the next day I had like a headache and my body was aching a little bit. And then my voice was a little cracky. And then, my COVID test is positive. And, and then I went and saw Dr. Rebecca Miller, and I had therapy, also had 50,000 milligrams of vitamin C in an IV bag things. And you know what? It's like, okay, I make it through. It's just like any other sickness. And now I've already hit. And so I'm good. And again, it's not to say that it is real. I question whether or not it's really a pandemic, though. And that's what lots of people are saying. It's like, it's just a virus. It's not really that big of it's the 2K. So I had COVID outbreaks at 2 of my homes, as I kind of mentioned to you guys. And it's very interesting the way that they were handled at both homes. Okay, so first home was a female home. It was Serenity Ranch. This was over a month ago. And I think a couple of the women, they ended up hanging out with a past resident who tested positive for COVID. And then it's like, okay, we let everybody in the house know. Everybody knows that we have residents with COVID-19. We make it very clear. And by the way, we take lots of precautions at our homes. We clean, we sanitize. We don't let outsiders into our home. Anybody that's an outsider, be it like a repair person or anybody that doesn't live in the home, myself being an employee of Camelback Recovery or any other staff members, we all wear masks when we go into the home. So we are very safe, and we follow CDC protocols. We take temperatures of all of our residents on a daily basis. So we're constantly checking, and we're doing everything that we possibly can. Now, that being said, we had a couple of the women were exposed to COVID. They quarantined in their rooms. We provide all the food, and because we provide all the food, that means that everybody is not out grocery shopping and going out to eat, and it limits the exposure. And all of our food is delivered by cart or by Amazon foods. So we do the best we can to limit the exposure. The women that were potentially positive, that were exposed, they were quarantined to their rooms. Food was delivered to them in their rooms. Anytime they left their room, they had to mask up and wear gloves and so forth. So that home, Serenity Ranch, all decided, okay, we're going to stick together. We're going to stick together. We gave everybody the option to leave. It's like, hey, you can leave if you want to leave. We're not going to make you stay here. And they all decided to stay. They decided to quarantine together and decided to, they decided just to stay together, stick together as a community, and by the way, according to Rebecca from credible sources, I think the CDC, the transmission rate or how contagious virus is, it's 20% of people in the same household will catch the coronavirus, and which is lower than the normal flu. The normal flu, the rate of transmission is like 35%, supposedly. Again, I'm not a doctor. This is just the information that I have been given. Okay, so Serenity Ranch, they all decided to stick together as a community. They teens together. They did prayer, meditation, gratitudes. They just they stuck together. They quarantined together as a community. Okay. 2 weeks comes and goes. At the end of 2 weeks, only 4 of them total ended up positive with the coronavirus. And they all made it through, and they're all still clean and sober, and they're all doing well. and there you have it. And it means, so now, okay, we have another case of another one of our homes, one of our male homes, Papago Springs, and a couple of the guys tested positive at that home. And again, this was over a month ago, so we're already through it. We're already through it. And the house managers decided to stay. For the most part, the guys that stay, and then there were a couple of guys that decided to leave. And again, we gave them the option, like, hey, you can leave if you want to. And a couple of the guys, they ended up leaving. And really what we found was them leaving, okay, the coronavirus was an excuse for them to go, because they both relapsed that same day. That's been my experience. And Rogan, it sounds like you have the same experience. It's it's an excuse to, it's again, not that the pandemic's not real, or it's not that the coronavirus is not real. The coronavirus is, it's not a pandemic though. In my experience, and again, in my non-professional opinion, that's what I've seen, is that people, they're much better off in the community, getting clean over, taking suggestions, right? If someone goes out, they say, listen, you know what? This is safe for me to stay at this home. Really, all it is it's an excuse for them to go drink. It's an excuse for them to go get high. It's an excuse for them to relapse. That's what we have seen, is that people use it as an excuse, which, hey, we're all in long-term recovery. We see it. We see people go in and out. Addicts early in recovery will look for any reason to go out.
Absolutely.
Anytime they're at a week, everybody wants to get clean and sober at one point until they're triggered, until they're having a bad day, until they find, it's like there's an excuse or a reason to leave. That's what ends up happening.
You don't even have to be in early recovery, right? A lot of this, for me personally, is just facing like, all right, say I believed everything was going on. And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to die, right? What do I want to do in my last dying months? And if you're not mitigating your fear in recovery, like, like your life could look totally different right now because of what's going on.
Yeah. Fake evidence appearing real.
We were just talking about that yesterday.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, okay, I might have the coronavirus because I was around somebody that had it. What?
Yeah. So there's so much, when we really think about this and we really, let's take everything that we have on the table and we put together our collective minds. The idea of this pandemic is that it can be as simple as us being this close and all of a sudden it spreads. And so the fear factor of it spreading is real. because we have seen it spread from all over the world. If it originated, I'm not saying that it did, but if it originated in China, it certainly has made an impact here in the United States, along with, you know, Germany and Italy and all the other countries. So it's definitely I get, is this a fake pandemic? But the fact that it's globalized does change the tune. So there's something real here. So we can't say that it's, in my opinion, fake just because of the impact it's had worldly. I don't know, though, as if it's so that the fear that's been generated has to be generated so much when it comes down to common sense. I've heard it. I'm sure you guys have too. You know, the common flu in America kills, you know, unfortunately, hundreds of thousands of people.
More people.
Well, right now, coronavirus is doing a number, but still, they're
we don't know
similar.
About that yet.
We're similar numbers, right? And that's the other part. We don't know. So I totally get what it is that you're saying. But what I really want to focus on is how come they're not, which we do in recovery houses. Tim, you did an excellent job with your house, just to say it straight up. I mean, you gave them education, awareness, the tools to be able to handle it.
Give them a choice,
the cleaning utensils. I mean, you really presented. Now, why didn't the professionals who are in the government do that for us as citizens? Why didn't they turn around and say, hey, listen, take a multivitamin, make sure you get plenty of rest. Everybody go on and get a therapist and talk about the stresses, you know, of life and how life has changed. Hey, school students, we're not going to yo-yo you up and down like you're going today, you're not going tomorrow. We're just going to cancel school for the year, or you're going to be online, and it's going to be from like 9 o'clock to 2 o'clock instead of 7 o'clock in the morning, and make it like we could have as a society done a lot better of a job as to how you handled it at Camelback Recovery. Which, isn't it so funny that we're talking about recovery and recovery housing, and we go ahead and have the empathy, compassion, and understanding to be able to give choice, the awareness, the education, the ability, the tools, the structure for your ladies' house to do really well. Where we could have had those same kind of attributes going on here in America, I believe, if we would have done a similar protocol instead of fear, scare. I mean, do you remember the paper towel and toilet paper pandemic? I mean, good Lord. Now that was a freaking pandemic. I mean,
right.
Hell, the funny stories were like doing drug deals with, like, you want to buy the toilet paper? You know, give me the money.
Honestly, like, that's really embarrassing, though. Like, to be a country that's concerned about toilet paper instead of like getting vitamin C or like other like better water, quality water, maybe like an ozone like thing to like clean your air. There's so many things that should have gone
fruits, vegetables
off the stock before toilet paper. But that's how backwards our society is in regards to healthcare and wellness.
Yeah, according to Ken Richardson of he's Ken and Mary Richardson are the founders of CODA. Fear is on a spectrum, and so you've got concern, worry, anxiety, panic, terror. So fear is on a spectrum. The only level of healthy fear is concern. Everything else is toxic, and that's what the media is promoting, is toxic fear. That's what's happening. So again, it's not that it's the coronavirus is not real, but whether or not it's the magnitude or the how bad it really is that's been blown out of proportion, and it's causing fear, it's causing anxiety, it's toxic, and I don't agree with it. Is the level of toxic fear that's out there? It's not helping people stay clean and sober, helping people stay safe.
No. And to just finish off what I was driving at is like, is this a fake pandemic? I believe it's become a real pandemic because of what media has done, because of the fear, because of the isolation, because of the worries, because of that it's just knocked us out. And to go back to our beginning of a conversation where a recovery house isn't even considered an essential business, but hauling, and again, I have nothing against dump trucks and hauling, doing your work and what it is, but literally we're talking about picking up dirt and bringing it to another site and dumping the dirt down versus life and death. I can always buy a dump truck load of dirt. I can't buy another human being. And yet the world didn't even see, which before this pandemic, we were having the opioid pandemic or the opioid crisis. So the world doesn't even see that recovery is going to be jeopardized by not being an essential business. And that's a real factor here in New Jersey because we were one of the first states to get blown up off the map. I mean, we had to travel around with a piece of paper that said we printed off of a government listing that said you were essential business, because if you got pulled over by the police and you didn't have that piece of paper, you were going to get a ticket. You're going to get in trouble. You're not an essential business. You're not allowed to be out there. So that changes, to go back to what you were just saying, that fear, okay, we're getting it from the media, but we also are getting it in like real life stuff on the clutch of what's happened in the social justice world with everything else that was happening in America. So there's been it's kind of like a ticking time bomb. So I kind of say that the pandemic is real. Is it necessarily a COVID pandemic? I don't know about specifically a COVID pandemic, but there's definitely been a pandemic created around it all.
Right. Yes. So what's the main message that you guys would like people to take away from this talk today?
I would say that there are a lot of places to get information, and in order to do that, it takes time, right? It takes time to figure out what you want to do, how you want to take care of yourself. So in order to do that, we need to take responsibility for our own wellness is what I'm saying. And maybe watching the news isn't the best idea for you, but just figure out what works for you. And I know for me, I'm usually a 6-7 hour sleeper. I've been sleeping 8 to 10 hours right now because that's how I deal with stress. And for someone super high performing, I'm oh my God, I'm sleeping for 10 hours. But that's just what I need right now. And that's how my body regulates what's kind of going on. This overload of information. I really do think that people can start taking real responsibility around their wellness. And it looks like so many different things. You can definitely find us on our website at www.recoveryorganization.com, where we share tips, easy tips and tricks. I teach meditations pretty much weekly, and it's a lot about breath. Right? Because right now, where the message is we can't breathe. I can't breathe. So a lot of breath meditations increases your chi. That means you have more energy to do things. You have more energy to deal with your addiction, your neuroses, whatever's going on. We need more energy right now because what the pandemic is doing, it's taking away our energy. Fear takes up, I believe, I think 60 to 80% of the brain when you're worrying about fear. That's a lot of energy. You can't deal with anything else. So I highly suggest meditations for sure, but any other way to really take responsibility for your wellness right now would be my message for everyone.
Awesome. And what about you, Rogan? What message do you want people to take away from this today?
I really hope that people take away that if we go back into the basics of recovery, it's how does it work? Honest, open, and willing. And I think that with everything that's going on, I was really afraid when I first came into recovery about life itself. Not saying I'm not still, but I was really afraid when I first started getting sober. And good people said, hey, honest, open, and willing. So if I'm honest about I'm feeding into this crazy media show, I'm feeding into all the fear that's being produced, I'm I'm not being open about my own concerns and my worries, and I'm not willing to take an active role in my wellness, then I need to be able to point the finger at myself. So I would like to leave everybody with, if you're in recovery, you've already done a terrific, amazing job getting yourself and having the help of others to get you there. So let's keep up with the positives. Let's utilize our recovery community. Let's utilize all the tools in the toolbox, and let's keep on doing that 1 foot at a time.
Awesome. Okay, I've got one more question for each of you. Sazha, tell me about your morning routine.
Okay, my morning routine. I love my morning routine. I love structure, actually. So, I've been sleeping for like 9-10 hours these days. So I get up at 8, right? I have a yoga set that I do every day. My personal pathway to recovery is Kundalini yoga. I know you had Tommy Rosen on a few weeks ago. Amazing. I'll also be teaching on ramatv.com, so you can check me out there. So I have rama-tv.com. And for folks in recovery, I may be able to get you free memberships. So please feel free to reach out. They also offer free memberships to veterans. So I have a yoga set. It ranges from 20 minutes to an hour, depending on how much time I have. I usually do like 30 minutes, and then I'll leave some for the nighttime. First, I make my bed. That's really, really important. I make my bed first thing in the morning. It drives me crazy if I don't. A lot of it comes from me being in the Navy, but that's my first accomplishment of the day, right? Like, I made my bed. It looks good. I have something to look forward to. I do my yoga. I come downstairs. I usually drink some tea and dive right into work. Depending how flexible I am in the morning, I schedule my morning around that routine.
How much time do you take to yourself in the morning, would you say?
Ooh, okay. I don't want to say that I'm selfish, but I definitely prioritize self-care. I would say sometimes 2 hours.
Love it. What about you, Rogan?
I get up, I put my shoes on, I'm in the car, I'm at the office. 1, 2, 3, let's go. No, I have.
I'm talking about post sobriety. So that was when you were 18. Okay.
Right. Exactly. I've had a ritual for a real long time. I always spend 30 minutes just pulling it together. The pulling it together could be sitting in silence and drinking iced tea and practicing meditation and prayers. It could be reading inspirational or 24-hour book, affirmation book. Sazha has been so kind enough in the last couple of weeks where she made me my own personal video of meditation that's about 24 minutes. And I'm here to tell you, I have to do that before I go take a shower because I do get a sweat on. And if I take a shower and then do it, I'm a little sweaty, or you know what I'm saying? Yeah. So it's changed. But I basically would tell you that I'm pretty religious with 30 minutes. I am spoiled in the summertime. It's a lot longer because and when the weather's right, I go for long walks with the dog, and that easily could be an hour. And then I do a prayer throughout the whole day. I'll stop at certain times and just check in with gratitude, even when I'm feeling great and even when I'm feeling bad. I just check in to say, wow, can you imagine all these leaves fell off the tree at this time?
Love it. Love it. Well, I think we're all three in alignment that self-care is such an important part of being in recovery and staying healthy and having a healthy mind. It's all about the mind, body, and spirit. And I guess the main message I want people to take away from this today is it's not, is this a fake pandemic? That's not the main message. The main message is that, hey, coronavirus is real. Self-care is the most important thing you can do for yourself. Staying connected, getting enough sleep, Sazha, to your point, yoga, meditation, breath work, staying connected to positive people in your life, journaling, and watching, waking up and turning on Facebook, waking up and looking at the news and watching the news. That's going to spiral you out of control. So the best thing that everyone can do, in my experience, and this is what you guys are saying as well, is like, we got to take care of ourselves. Let's start with a morning routine. Doesn't matter what the morning routine is, but let's start the day off on the right foot and get things going. And we all want to be happy, joyous, and free. So that's the path. Thanks again, Rogan and Sazha. It was so good to have you here today. And everybody else, hope you have some day.
Thanks,
Thank you
Tim,
so
so
much, Tim.
much. Have a great day.
Happy holiday.